Welcome team, really lovely to see you all. We're delighted to have you here. Welcome to the semi-finals. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, I'm Megan. We are really excited to be here today to talk you through our civil service data challenge entry. Unfortunately, our idea originator, Katrina Williams, couldn't make it today because she's getting an OBE from His Majesty himself, so quite good reasoning as far as that goes. But we do have a short video from her just to introduce you to our idea a bit and give you a bit of background.
Hello, my name's Katrina Williams. I'm Head of Travel at Crown Commercial Service, and part of my role is to find accommodation solutions for vulnerable people, whether that be vulnerable people arriving into our country from Ukraine, from Afghanistan, on small boats seeking asylum, to our own nationals here that might be looking for support because they are rough sleepers, victims of abuse, they've experienced a flood or storm damage and need to be evacuated. At the moment, the way that we handle the arrivals and the sourcing process for this emergency and crisis accommodation is that we have a series of spreadsheets. So it's very manual based in Excel. And over time, as more of these groups of vulnerable people have needed our help and support, we've had to expand upon spreadsheet after spreadsheet. So the manual solution has significantly grown in size and scale, which is what's prompted me to come up with this idea to do something different as we move forward. The idea is to remove these Excel spreadsheets and to create a portal. So it will be an automated solution, which currently at the moment is manual, so a significant improvement just going down the digital route. That will make it 24/7, it will make it real life and live availability, so it will stop multiple people having to ring multiple hotels to try and find availability.
So, as it stands now, the delivery of emergency accommodation comes with a few challenges. For example, recent experiences highlighted two government departments bidding against each other for the same space, pushing the prices up by £100 per room night. On another occasion, a hotel wanted to outbook a government department to make room to another department with a bigger purse. Speaking about the size of the challenge, since 2020, over 1.2 billion is spent in emergency accommodation has come through Crown Commercial Service agreements, housing more than 22,000 people each day this year alone. After speaking and engaging with further government departments, we estimate a further 2.6 billion is spent in this emergency accommodation per annum, with central government, wider public sector and third sector departments. This will bring us to a total of 3 billion spent in emergency accommodation each year. With a commercial benefit average of 23%, this will give us 690 million savings for taxpayers each year. Having said that, mind you that this is only what CCS has visibility of. Unfortunately, the full picture of government spend in emergency accommodation is currently unknown due to the fragmented and decentralized ways of working. Having said that, the good news is that our digital solution could fix this, so let's hear more about it then. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you. So, as Katrina mentioned earlier, there is a process in place to tackle this problem. However, it is done in Excel. This process is very manual, relatively slow, and not scalable, and prone to human error. So what's our solution? Well, we want to provide access to a live database to provide a real-time view of emergency accommodation. We've come up with some proof of concept designs where the accommodation providers can directly upload their stock and license requirements, whereas the government departments can allocate staff and civilians at scale and at pace. So the branding for this solution we've come up with is HART, the HMG Emergency Accommodation Reporting Tool. We've come up with a logo as a design concept, and we've come up with some thorough discussions about the solution. But is it realistic? Over to Dragos to answer that.
Absolutely, Matt. We had a discussion with CTM, which is the designer and developer for Managed Quarantine solution, and they offered to reuse their code used for that project for our advantage. The price for this would be $250 per developer hour, but we like to keep our options open, so we didn't decide for this particular provider. We have some other options, but for this one will be the database, the live database will be in Power BI. What will be the next step, Jamie?
Thanks, Dragos. So we've already done quite a lot of work to lay the foundations for Project Heart, but you can now see a bit of a timeline for how we see the project progressing. So the first part is that we would like to clarify our solution, iron out those current questions and fully realise the plan. Then we would aim to deliver Project Heart with two parts. So the first is the core part of Heart. So that aims to deliver 70% of the benefit. And that is because it would be making Project Heart a simple place where you can see the available accommodation held by other departments. The second part, which gives the remaining 30%, is where Project Heart develops more into a booking platform. So that's where you see departments able to quickly request and receive rooms from other departments. To go a little bit more into depth with those benefits, I will now hand you back to Megan.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so we believe that there are loads of benefits to Project Heart if the 690 million commercial benefits that Marcio mentioned weren't enough. But in the interest of time, I'll just talk you through a few of the key ones. So firstly, reducing costs. So by being able to have this one centralised portal, we would just much better be able to aggregate government spend and use that to leverage prices within the market to drive them down a bit and stop acting in a kind of disaggregated, siloed way that we currently do. This would also help to prevent some of the issues that Marcio mentioned earlier, such as gazumping and price wars. I think he spoke about where over Operation London Bridge we saw prices driven up by over £100 per room night, which would be great both for the public purse but also for our reputation with the market and with the taxpayer. It would also, we think, give us a really enhanced status in the international market with other governments, because this isn't something that's being done in any other government, and we think it would just be great to be a world leader in this space. And we do interact with other governments on emergency accommodation, specifically like Australia. We do a lot of kind of knowledge share with them, and we think it would just be really impressive to be able to show them this and potentially help them set up something similar. What we think would be incredibly revolutionary as well is having that real-time picture that Matt alluded to before. Currently, we do 2 manual reports a week up to ministers and various stakeholders, but these are all held on spreadsheets, and Juanita, who's joined us today, has to spend like a couple of afternoons a week doing them. So it's really time-consuming, and it just gives that snapshot in time. It doesn't give us the real-time picture. So we think this would be just an amazing opportunity to be able to react really rapidly when a crisis does hit, when we suddenly have a situation where we need to be placing civilians or civil servants into hotels at pace. If we could just see the live picture instead of having to pull reports from the various suppliers or travel management companies. And that speed of response kind of comes on to the bulk of the benefit. So we've spoken a lot about the stats and the figures, and they're great. Wouldn't say no to 690 million commercial benefits. But the real crux of it is the benefit to the people. So in Katrina's video, she covered some of the cohorts who we currently help place into emergency accommodation, such as Afghan asylums, Ukrainian refugees. We also manage quarantine. There was that was all done kind of through this manual system, and rough sleepers, victims of abuse, and if there was mass flooding, evacuees from that. These are really vulnerable cohorts, a lot of them, where they've lost their homes. Sometimes they've had to leave their country. They might have lost their family as well. And so for them, the difference between being placed in that kind of safe space, that accommodation, if that's 1 day or 2 day or a week, is massive. And so we think the real benefit to this is being able to support those vulnerable people at a much quicker pace than we currently can. And kind of to punctuate that a bit, we've got a short video to share with you of a Ukrainian woman who was placed on a vessel by Scottish Government, which was done through CCS.
Very good. I think that it's a very big deal. Our people would be thankful very much. It's the same as a big hotel. I'm like very much. It's the first day, but it's really good. Really good. Very tasty food. I want to get a job. I want that my children go to school here. I want to live here about 1 year, and then we will see how we'll feel here. I asked them how here, and he told that very good. Very good. Very good.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you. And there are some pictures just to leave you of thank you letters we received from some Afghan children. and we'll now take any questions. Thank you.
Really, really good presentation. Thank you, all of you. Right, who would like to kick us off? Henry.
Hi, I'm Henry. Thank you very much for that. Obviously, very heartwarming to see all of that stuff. So thank you for all the hard work you do on this. I just want to make sure I understand what you're suggesting. So you're suggesting that you build effectively internal software system that you guys can use to book for the people that you need to book. So it's an internal thing, not an external facing thing. And then the hotel/providers can upload their availability into the system. Just is that right?
It is, yeah. Do you want me to talk you through how we'd see it working?
Well, I suppose my question would be is that sounds remarkably like a lot of platforms that exist at the moment, in the sense of like booking.com or hotels or whatever it might be. And I think there are quite a lot of white label. I guess the question is like, have you looked into white labels that you could just, it feels like you could get this up and running really quite quickly using existing, like you don't need to pay anybody to build anything. There's like existing white label software out there that you could use to do some sort of version of this, I mean, like super quickly. And so I just want to understand, like, has that been explored? Are you going to do that, or are you taking a different approach?
So we've engaged with one of our suppliers who has delivered a similar solution. I think what we have to take into context here is it's emergency accommodation. Because we're dealing with different cohorts, it's whether the providers, the hotel, will, you know, there might be sensitivities around certain cohorts. You know, you might have unaccompanied minors in one hotel, you know, and there's all them considerations that you need to take into consideration. So we have approached one of our providers who's done this previously, and there's been some talk of what they done to get that up and running and in place, and that was endorsed and delivered. The only thing with that is there was a few challenges and a few lessons learned. So we are going out to the wider supply base to see what else and engage with them prior to, you know, March time, to see what is on the market.
Yeah, and I think Juanita raised some really good points around how this would differ to like your booking.com. But in addition to that, when like with booking.com, obviously you just put in like, I'm looking for 2 bedrooms or whatever in this space, but a lot of the accommodation that is sourced through CCS is exclusive use. So it'd be like the whole hotel or the whole holiday park. And so there's often, especially now that the accommodation market is recovering after COVID, that would include, we would still want to have visibility of places where there are people currently placed, but they might be moved out in like a week or something to enable the exclusive use of the premise. So I think that's another area where it just differs slightly, because we're not just looking at what's available, but what can be made available, and also having like contracted stock. So like, I don't know, DWP have these rooms booked, but nobody's in them, so we can use them. As opposed to like your booking.com where you're just seeing what's free for use at a certain date. I
totally get that. I just think what I'm worried about is that what you're suggesting is building quite a big software product, and particularly if it's got to take into lots of these cases. And I worry that building something like that is quite a big undertaking, and startups raise millions of pounds to do things exactly like what you've just saying. Whereas I think there's probably some sort of version of what you've just described that you could literally get live within a week by using existing white label software that's out there. And I suppose when thinking about like if you got through to the semi-final, to the final, seeing something like whether that be seeing something. I mean, it was great to see like the kind of the mock-ups that you did, but that made me think even more that the kind of software that could back up that mock-up probably exists.
Yeah, so we've that's definitely something that we would want to look more to before the final if we were lucky enough to get through, because at the minute we just wanted a kind of proof of concept. Can this be done? We know it can, but in terms of like actual options for how we would build it or use it or what's out there, we haven't spent as much time yet looking at that, and that's kind of part of our, on the timeline we had the like next stage before the delivery, and that's kind of one of the key things for us to look at there.
The sense I'm getting is that the software solution, the portal, the database, is actually a catalyst for changing how we operate across government between departments, and that the real benefit is from that much more coherent, collegiate approach. Can you bring to life for us how that future operating model works better than the way it currently does? Because to me, that's the nub of what you're proposing.
Yeah. If we talk about the contracted hotels, so the idea of the portal is when a user goes into the portal, they'll be able to see a list of hotels. There's contracted hotels, and like you said before, there's two different types of them contracted hotels. One is exclusive use, the other isn't exclusive use. So if another department comes in and sees there's available space within a contracted hotel, say 80% already in use and the other 20% isn't, then they can request to use that other 20%. You know, so it just avoids waste.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the...
Sorry, if I could add. I think our main issue now is that government departments, they don't talk to each other, so they don't have the visibility of what has been contracted by another government department. The way that we do now is very manual, so we try to cross-check spreadsheets and provide an update, sort of a bi-weekly type of email that Juanita kindly provides to government departments, but we know that this is not enough. The idea is, just to give an example, we have some cohorts that are now allocated, let's say, Afghan returnees in a number of hotels, but we know that there is spare rooms in that particular hotel that Home Office is not fully using. So if there is another department that they have an emergency situation, such as rough sleepers or local authorities that need to house more people, they could potentially use that stock that's already contracted, but currently, they don't have no way to see the Home Office has that spare capacity in that particular place. So that's where the platform would facilitate the integration and consolidation of available contracted and non-contracted rooms in the market.
I think one of the things that's really surprised me around the operating model piece is actually from a business process perspective, there'd be very little change. It's the access to collated and centralized information. So the departments themselves would still be bearing the brunt of making a booking direct with a hotel or an accommodation provider, which is what they do today, but they just have greater access to information, saving waste.
Well, I'm understanding now is it's that real-time access by departments to the availability data, whereas at the moment it's a really non-real-time, inefficient process. So as government, we make best use of our stock. Have I got that?
Yeah.
Come in after eight.
I was just going to build on that, because that's clarified. So I'm Aydin, by the way. Thank you very much. That was a fantastic presentation. And I think the logo is fantastic as well. We all love a good acronym in the civil service. And you've got a nested acronym in there with HMG as an H, so I think it's brilliant. So it was just to build on that. I think Henry's right. Shamelessly copy and pasting a problem that's been solved elsewhere by another organisation is exactly what you should be doing. In a sense, what we've got is a uneven supply. So you know, a contract has got space for 50 other people, but it's not being utilised. We've got demand that's kind of all over the place as well, and this brings clarity to the demand and to supply, so we get the most efficient and effective. So that is definitely a problem in a different guise that's been solved from a software point of view by another company, so definitely look into that. My question was just around a bit more detail around how these things are contracted out. So are we talking about frameworks that different government departments use for all these suppliers, or is everyone doing their own thing? That's the bit that wasn't clear, and how that links to the system, basically.
It's a bit of a mix at the minute. So me, Marcia, Juanita and Katrina, who you saw the video of, all work at CCS in the travel accommodation and venues category, and so we own the frameworks there that a lot of government departments and the wider public sector do have call-off agreements from our framework, so we have a bit of visibility there. Not always though, so whilst quite a bit of Afghan stuff does come through our framework, also a lot of it doesn't, it's kind of split. But we have been talking to our stakeholders and like the other government departments already, and there's a lot of excitement for this idea and buy-in from those government departments. And so they've kind of been saying to us that if this were up and running, fit for purpose, ticking all the boxes, that it's definitely something that they would use, and potentially that would link into our frameworks. But so yeah, at the minute it's kind of a large proportion of it goes through us, but especially in the local authority space, we're not seeing all of that at the minute.
That was going to be my second question. So is that the area that we've got less visibility on, what's happening in the local authorities?
Yes.
And that's the big part that we're probably, was that including the numbers that you were quoting, or is that on top of
well, in the estimation, yes. But CCS works quite well with central government. So vast majority of central governments, they do have a call-off with CCS. But wider public sector, we still have sort of a long way to go. So we estimate the local authorities, they might have this spend that I've shared, but in true honesty, so the full picture is, as I said, is currently unknown, because some of those wider public sector departments, they do not engage with CCS yet. Having the platform is what we would consider one of our USPs. And hopefully we will get more government departments engaging with CCS, understanding the benefit of cross-information.
Understood.
And that was also the purpose for the split in the delivery. So the first 70% is the consolidated information, enabling departments to see what's already booked that they might be able to utilise. The remaining 30% is about getting the collective commercial agreements lined up and recognising that getting commercial agreements lined up and frameworks is a timely piece.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Alison from ONS, first off, really good, slick presentation. Really enjoyed that. Thank you. Interesting, this discussion's been really helpful because there's a kind of a common theme that's emerged around understanding the scope of where you're trying to make impact. Might be worth thinking about that if you come back to the final, really making sure that that comes across crisply. What's interesting is a sense that I think we've all got now, which is we're not looking for government to become a broker in this space, and there's a danger, I think, of how this comes across initially, that we're starting to do things that aren't in our core business. But what I'm wondering is, are there activities across government, like the prison service, for instance, where they're having to manage their estate, very different use case, appreciate that, but they're managing their estate on a day-by-day basis, and they need to know where the space is, that you could talk to and try and make use of in terms of that quick, particularly the 70% solution. Because I'm not sure whether at the moment your plans are to digitize your Excel spreadsheets, which is kind of one approach here. And I think the point Simon was making is important here. Is there an opportunity for any refinement to the operating model rather than just digitize your spreadsheets? Because that's always a bad place to end up. So I think if there was a question there, do you see an opportunity, for instance, for the discussing with the prison service around their approach and whether their software and technology could be adapted?
Yeah, definitely. We work quite closely with Ministry of Justice at the minute on their prison release estate, that's the one. So we do sit on, CCS chairs a HMG accommodation strategy working group, another awful long name. But so that has Ministry of Justice, Home Office, Cabinet Office, DLUC and CCS, kind of all the departments who have big accommodation needs. So this is something that we've been raising with them and starting to work a bit more collaboratively now as we move on with this project to think, like you said, like, what are you doing? What can we steal from that? And how can we refine our own model with them? And that's definitely something we'd look to continue ahead of the final if we get that far, or otherwise.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Sue. Yeah, as the others have said, really good presentation. I've got a couple of questions. One, I think, is going to be quick. It's just my understanding of what kind of data is going to sit on the system. And I've kind of drawn the conclusion it's going to be non-personally identifiable, which is basically numbers and some form of being able to flag if it's, as you described one scenario where it might be people in a particular bit of accommodation, but they might need to move in a week's time or something. But there's nothing coming from the Home Office who might be helping to support a particular group of people. None of their information's going across to this, is it? It's all just
there's no sensitive information. Right. It's purely going to be the number of sleepers in occupancy that hotel has got or accommodation, and the number of sleepers available and the number of rooms. So you might have 10 rooms So what does 10 rooms mean? Is that 10 single rooms that 10 people can go into, or is that 10 double rooms or 10 family rooms? And that's where it all comes in.
My other question kind of follows on a bit from Alison's about thinking about through the opportunities, because I also think probably a lot of this is going to, the value is going to be dependent on the quality of the input, isn't it? So that it's easy at times to kind of focus on what the dashboard, what the tool's going to look like, but I'm sure you're already thinking about what's that, maybe like SLA for want of a different description, around the organisations who are going to be using this and frequency of update from them and both the kind of hotel or accommodation providers. Is that something
yeah,
that's
it's
in
going to
your
be
plan?
from the hotel providers themselves, and obviously those that are contracted to upload and refresh that. There's a sheet in the background that says when the update's done, so they can be chased, you know, if there's no update done at a particular point in time on that day.
Yeah, and again, just Alison's point, you could think about, is there something that you could do through the system that, that means you're reducing the amount of chasing? Great, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for your time. Really, really great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Good job.